All right, cool. So welcome to this Hunchly session this morning where we're going to do a bunch of wacky and wild things. My name is Justin Seitz. I lead up the crew at Dark River Systems who builds Hunchly. And again, just to reiterate, the session will be recorded. I'm not able to help you troubleshoot audio or video problems from this point forward. So we'll be posting them to the Hunchly YouTube channel after it's done. And of course, if you have any questions or random thoughts that pop up while I'm jabbering away, use the question and answers box. So even if that's ideas for other training sessions, which we've had a couple of folks put some ideas in this morning, and then talking about kind of some research type ideas. So any of those things are definitely welcome. And of course, I'll be prompting you as we go. None of this is scripted, so it's a pretty free-flowing thing. If you need me to kind of dive into a particular topic somewhere, just make sure you stop me. All right, cool. So what you should be seeing right now is the Hunchly dashboard. And Hunchly is a two-piece system. So what we're looking at right now is the dashboard, where we're going to manage our cases and some of the materials. I'm going to show you some of the useful investigative tools. But Hunchly also lives inside of your web browser. And when I say web browser, I mean anything that's Chromium based. So Chromium itself, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, or Brave, the privacy focused browser. So what the part of the browser does is it follows you around while you're investigating and preserves every page that you view and stores it on disk for you. So the great thing is that it frees you as an investigator or researcher or journalist from having to kind of think about taking screenshots or doing documentation. Hunchly will kind of do all of this for you behind the scenes, and it packages it up in a way that is presentable for court purposes. Okay, so the first 5 minutes or even less is actually really how to use Hunchly. It's a very straightforward, simple tool to use. Even if you never use any of the investigative stuff, you can learn how to use Hunchly in a very short amount of time. So the first thing we want to do is we actually want to create a new case. So how we do that is by clicking in the left-hand little corner here and hitting New Case. And in our demos, we always investigate me for maximum embarrassment. Cool. So now we have this new case, and that's literally it. That's all you got to do. So a couple of mouse clicks, one case name, and you are done in the dashboard. So I'm going to fire open the browser. Cool. And up here in the top right-hand corner where your Chrome extensions are, you're going to see this little Hunchly 2 Chrome extension. If you don't see it, click the little puzzle piece and then pin it. So you just got to click it so that the pin is highlighted, and then that'll make it pop up. And now there's a few things to note here about the Hunchly Chrome extension, and only a couple more mouse clicks to get started. So the first is the capture switch. So currently, Hunchly's capture is turned on. You can see it's enabled. When I turn it off, it's disabled. On, off, on. There you go. So you're going to want to make sure when you're investigating that capture is turned on. All right, and pick the case. That's it. Make sure you got the right case. Don't worry if you capture pages into the wrong case. You can always move them later. But I always, anytime I fire up the browser and I'm about to start working, I always double check the extension, just make sure everything's set up the way I need it to be. Cool, that's it. So I'm going to teach you now how to do evidence preservation. So I'll go to google.com and voila, that's it. So training is literally complete. I think it was only about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. So just the act of browsing to google.com, Hunchly looks at the URL and says, oh, we've moved to a new URL. It waits for the page to load, and then it captures the whole thing, timestamps it, hashes it, stores it on your disk. So this all just happened without us having to think about it. No buttons to click, nothing to do. And we could just continue doing our research and going about our business. So I've used some pretty strong language this morning about some of the residential schools here in Canada, which is a goddamn tragedy. So you might see me showing some rather uncouth language on my Twitter feed this morning. I apologize for that. But what we're looking at is the ability to just stay focused on our investigation. We're not constantly distracted or worried about missing something. We can just do what we're good at, and that is investigating. So if we go back to our dashboard, now we're going to see that some new information has shown up here. We can see that we've captured 2 pages. We've done one search, right? We Google search for my name. And down here is a history view. So this is showing us the breadcrumb trail of where we browsed to and when we did it. So I'm going to click on this page, and this is our page review screen. So what this allows you to do is walk back through any page you've captured, just like the Wayback Machine, and be able to go back in time and see what you saw on that day. So 6 months from now, when I open up this case, this page is going to look exactly like this. So it's not loading anything off the internet. This is coming straight off of your hard drive. And this is your permanent preserved copy of that page that you viewed. So this is really nice. And how we capture is in MHTML format. So that's why it all stays in one file like that. MHTML is just this fancy version of HTML, and it kind of look like emails, but it allows the Google Chrome, it allows it to form one file with all the images and styling and everything inside of it, instead of like this big folder full of resources. So by expanding the information panel here, I can also see all of the critical things when I need to get prepared for court or when I know I'm going to get cross-examined. And that is, what did I see? Where did I see it? The URL, right? And when did I see it? The timestamp. Now you'll note that we have two timestamps here. We have one that's the date and one that's updated. And so what this is when you load a web page, and in Google's case, the entire page gets loaded all at once. So there's no real updates happening, right? The page just stays the same. So that's why you see those two timestamps are identical. However, if I start browsing down a Twitter timeline, as I'm browsing down, more and more stuff gets loaded, more tweets get loaded. Hunchly detects that those tweets have got loaded, and then it updates that capture. So what you'll see is then an updated timestamp. All right? And the last thing is important when you're submitting this as evidence, the hash of the actual file. So what this will allow you to do is not telling anyone that you haven't tampered with it, for one. So hashes are not tamper-proof. That's not what they're there for. But what it will allow you to do is when you submit this evidence, sending that hash will allow both parties to know and verify that the act of transmitting the data didn't alter it. So that's it. That's what you're going to get with hashes. Now, hashes are significantly different in the context of a forensic examiner, right? Because it's a totally different ball game, totally different set of conditions. But in this case, it allows you to submit evidence and at least know that the evidence wasn't modified in transit. All right. Any questions about page capture, setting cases up, anything like that? You know, that I can help to answer questions of the universe? I have a sip of coffee while you think. Nothing. Everybody's largely uncurious today. Or shy. That's fine. Cool. So that's it. That's all you need to know. In a very short amount of time, you can be up and running, capturing pages, and reviewing those materials with little headache. Now what we can do is start to leverage some of the investigative tools that are built into Hunchly. And one of my favorite, and probably the one I use the most, is our selector system. So what selectors are just little keywords that describe the subject of your investigation or are important to your investigation. So for example, when we think about selectors, we might put in a name. So Justin Seitz, for example, because that's who we're actually investigating. We might not even have a name. We might only have an anonymous, like, social media handle, for example, like jms.py. It doesn't matter what you put in there, but it should be relevant. Now, a couple of things are going to happen. The first is Hunchly has actually searched backwards through our case and is highlighting to the fact here by saying they got hits, and down here with the blue badge, that it actually found Justin Seitz and jms.py on a page we had already captured. Now, when we only have 2 pages, it's not super useful. But you can imagine if you've been investigating a relatively complex case for a few weeks, you discover a new email address, and then all of a sudden you punch it in and Hunchly comes back and says you got 10 hits. And you're gonna go, what the hell? Where else did I see this, right? So what you're able to do then is filter on that selector by clicking on it and go back and review where you might have saw that email address in the past. You just didn't know it was important then. So this is really useful, this kind of backwards looking search as you build up more selectors, and you will as you investigate. As you learn phone numbers and email addresses and other usernames, you can keep adding them in. Now, the other cool thing is as we're browsing, Hunchly is actually going to be looking for those terms automatically on every page that we browse to. So what this does is almost like having a little robot that's doing Control or Apple F on your keyboard for find and doing it all on its own everywhere you go. So if you start to fatigue, like I do, if I've been investigating for a while, I'll miss stuff, right? Like I can literally read something that is important and just miss it because I'm human. And so what the selectors system is going to do is kind of make sure that it's picking those things up for you anyway. Now you can actually turn on selector highlighting in the settings panel in Hunchly, which will highlight them on the screen visually for you. Or you can see there's this little red badge that pops up on the Chrome extension, and that's telling you that you got selector hits here. Okay, so I use them a ton, and if you're bringing in data from like Spiderfoot or some other tool like an export, you got a whole bunch of names or a whole bunch of email addresses, you can bulk add them here. Just paste them one per line, and it will import them all and search through your case. All right, cool. Let me see, I got a couple of questions here. One on visualize the search. Yeah, so we do, so EO, we definitely do have plans for showing off some more collaborative stuff with Hunchly and the data forwarding, being able to kind of build up some visualizations, all of that. So stay tuned for that for sure. Awesome, awesome. What do we got here? Awesome, yeah, so someone had just mentioned that they had put their hand up but unable to unmute. So on webinars, you're not able to actually chat over voice. You have to use the question and answer box. So if you can type your questions out in the Q&A box, that would be great, because I'm not able to unmute people. It becomes a bit unmanageable with a ton of people. All right, cool. Cool. Awesome. And yeah, so I've had a couple of technical support related questions. So if anyone has technical related questions, they need support, I'm just going to send support@hunch.ly to everyone. I'm unable to help with support requests on these webinars, unfortunately. I'm sorry. All right, but my team will be happy to help you right away, probably before I'm even done finishing this webinar. All right, cool. Let's move on. So we'll talk about tags real quick. They're just a way to categorize your content. So you can do it from the Chrome extension, or you can do it here in the dashboard, but they work exactly like tagging does in pretty much every other platform. It allows you to kind of define some categories. So generally, I will have some broad categories like social media, and then if I'm doing a fraud case or something, you know, depending on the specifics, it might be like big ticket assets, right? So if somebody's a fraudster and they got yachts or something. So as I'm browsing through the Chrome extension, I can be tagging pages so that they get filed away. Now, for the people who are in law enforcement, this is really important because this will make your life a lot easier with disclosure. If you have 1,000 pages, going through all of them to pick through which ones you want to use can be really difficult. Whereas with tags, you can save yourself a lot of hassle. So again, in the dashboard, I can actually retroactively tag materials by expanding the information panel here. And I can click and add a tag there like that. Or from inside the Chrome extension when we're browsing around, as we're browsing, we can kind of go up here into tags and tag things from here. Okay? And that will help us file things away. And you can see them, they got the tags applied here. And then you can do fun things like being able to click the social media tag, which will then filter, only showing me social media stuff. And then I can drill down in even further and say, well, only show me the pages that had Justin Seitz and were tagged social media. So you can mix and match selectors and tags. You can mix and match selectors on their own too. So known associates can be really useful. If you're doing gangs and guns or fraud investigations, you can actually filter and say, only show me pages that had both of these names on them. Might be corporate registration or some social media where two people are chatting at each other. So either way, that combination of tags and selectors is going to make you more diligent, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. And later on, if we have time, I will show you how to do some exports where you can export based on those tags. So it will make your life a lot easier when you're having to present evidence. All right, cool. So let's take a couple of questions here. What do we got? Was there something that needed to be done to capture the entire page without scrolling, or does it do it automatically? That's a great question. So in the case of Google or even Bellingcat here, this whole thing loads all at once. So Hunchly didn't have to, there was nothing special that needed to occur. Once it's done loading that content, Hunchly receives that signal, and then that's when it knows to do the capture. Now, if you start scrolling down a Twitter timeline, you do have to do the scrolling and the comment expanding and all of that stuff yourself. And it is worth noting that Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook right now have some technology choices where it will unload content. So what you can see, for example, we'll just do this example really quickly because it's relevant. Scrolling down Instagram, what we'll get is that Hunchly, because it's updating the same capture, we're going to see some funny behavior here. So the top picture is the future of audio technology. Let's scroll down and get some more content going. We're going to see Hunchly light up orange because it's working. Okay, so it did its thing, login box, perfect. So let's go take a look at the dashboard, and we know what we saw, right? And we saw like those images and the audio technology thing at the top. And if we come in here into the dashboard, so for one, this is technically accurate, having this on the screen. Annoying, maybe obscuring, yes, but technically accurate. So I get lots of questions about modals popping up and stuff, and it's like, that's actually what was on the page. So all we can do is capture what's there. But it is important to note, because there are times where you just want to trigger that modal later or take a note or something so that it's not obscuring. But you see a problem right away. Behind this modal, there's no pictures. It's just a big blank box. And then they start down here. So why is that? Well, what happened, if you remember a few years ago when you were investigating, you'd start scrolling down a Twitter or Facebook, and if the timeline was really long, you'd start, going down the page, and all of a sudden your browser would start to slow down, and your fans on your laptop turn on, and everything starts grinding. And it's because it just kept adding more content to the page, and the page eventually gets to this massive size. So what they started doing is actually, as you scroll these pictures and videos out of view, what you don't see is behind the scenes, Instagram's unloaded them off the page. Okay, so they're gone. So they no longer show up. So as I keep scrolling, that's going to keep happening. The further down I go, the more this process happens, and the bigger the blank space we'll get in our capture, right? Because Hunchly only sees this big blank area where the images and videos used to be loaded. So how do we fix this? Well, in Hunchly, what we have is a setting. I'm going to show you here, page capture sensitivity. So by default, it's major changes only, which is what you want. But if I have to dive into Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, I switch this to all changes, and I hit save. Okay, fire up the browser again. I always kill the browser whenever this is just habit. Don't feel like you need to do it, but I do it anytime I do like major like settings changes and stuff. Even when I'm installing other extensions, it's just a habit thing. All right, so now what's going to happen is as we browse down, instead of Hunchly continually updating over top of that same capture, giving us the blank space, it's actually going to create a fresh capture every time. So we're going to end up with a ton of captures, but we are going to actually be able to pick off every image and piece of content that's here. So as we scroll down, it's just going to keep pumping captures out. So you don't want to run this forever, and you definitely don't want to just browse around like this, because it will generate tons and tons and tons of data. You can see now we have piles of Amber Mac captures, right? See that? Whereas before we only had one, but they're going to be complete. They're not all going to be together, but it will be complete. You'll be able to find what you need, and you'll be able to explain in court why you had to do it that way, right? Because of this technology change that Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook has done, right? So this is just being way more aggressive with capturing. Once I'm done on Instagram, I go back in and I turn it off. Hit save. I just turn it off and go back to my regular stuff. Okay, so hopefully that helped to answer a bunch of potential questions. All right, any plan? I'm going to take one more and we're going to move on. Any plans to make available on Firefox? Also, I haven't tried yet, but is Hunchly useful in Chromium? Yes, I use Chromium actually most of the time for my investigations. And for those of you that worry about Google integration in terms of Big Brother Google watching you while you use Chrome, use Chromium. All the Google services are disconnected from it. It's annoying. Like, you don't realize how nice it is to have automatic translation and other stuff. That stuff doesn't work anymore, but Chromium works great. I use it every day for with Hunchly. So totally no Firefox, through no choice of our own. Firefox adopted the Chrome extension model. They brought over like 90% of the stuff from Chrome so that people could write extensions for both, but they did not bring over MHTML capture, and we rely on MHTML capture. I've tried a number of different approaches to try to work with Mozilla, I've tried a lot of different things, and none of it has worked, so we've just abandoned it. Mozilla's not interested in implementing it. We don't blame them. And honestly, in my view as a security practitioner, there's never been a case where Firefox has beat out Chrome anywhere. So that's also me as an exploit writer and as an investigator who use both browsers, right? I use Firefox too. So anyway, there's just never a good reason to me to use a Firefox-based browser over top of a Chromium-based one. If you're worried about privacy, use Brave. So anyway, that's just my personal opinion. All right, cool. Let's move on, talk about notes. So these ones are important too. I love these things. So you're going to use these a lot, hopefully, and develop some muscle memory around them, because what they allow you to do is add context to what you're seeing, and also to help kind of build up a bit of a timeline for your investigation as you're kind of tracking through stuff that's important. So for example, we'll just keep picking up on our investigation where we left off. We'll continue investigating me. So, you know, here's a LinkedIn profile. Now what I do is I right click, Hunchly 2, take note. That's going to pop this modal open where I can just enter some information. That's what these windows are called, by the way. They're called modals. If that's a weird term to you, they're just little HTML pop-ups, basically. All right, cool. So we can say Justin Seitz' LinkedIn profile. And when I hit save, what Hunchly's going to do is it's going to take a screenshot of the viewable area in our browser. We can use this later to build reports. But it is also going to tie that to a full content capture, and it's going to store text. So we can edit this text later if we need to. We can, you know, export all these to PDF if we want. But the really nice thing is, as I'm going along, I'm building this timeline of stuff that I'm finding, right? I'm taking these notes, adding context. And when I have to take a break, and maybe it's a weekend break or a week or whatever, when I come back to my case, being able to read through these notes and kind of pick through and remember where I was and refresh my memory is extremely useful. There's also times where some websites just do crazy stuff and Hunchly can't pick it up. So taking a note will capture visually what's going on the screen. Add a note in your note. Explain why you had to take a note that included a screenshot and why the MHTML capture may look different, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's a totally reasonable explanation. Now, if you want to get into the technicals of, you know, how some content is loaded in your browser and the tricks that some websites do, like Google Maps, I mean, definitely you can get a whole education on that. But I don't believe the courts are going to need that. They're just going to need to understand why you had to use this method in a certain case. All right, cool. Oh, and you can also take notes retroactively. So, oh, I left that setting on. I did. I thought I clicked save. But what we can do here is we can add a note right here in our page review screen. Any page, you can have the content where you want it. Click add note. Bob's your mother's brother. There you go. All right, cool. Here we go. We got a few questions. Are you aware of any performance limitations when using Hunchly inside a Linux VM? No. In fact, Hunchly on Linux generally runs a lot faster than anywhere else, even faster than Mac OS X. So Phil always laughs because when he does our quality assurance testing, he's always just like, I'm always so shocked at how blazing fast Hunchly is on Linux. So yeah, and a big, you know, a lot of that is because the back-end processor, I don't know if it's the compiler optimizations or what, but it is just faster and nicer. So generally, use Ubuntu. Don't use Kali. By the way, whoever's listening, please, everybody right now, don't use Kali. Do not use a hacking VM for investigations. That's not what they're for. Okay, so don't do it. Lots of times those VMs, they expect you to run as administrator or root, right? And you gotta like do all kinds of tricks like run your browser in these insanely unsafe ways to make it work. So don't use Kali, because we will have to force you to do stuff with Chrome that is really insecure. We have not found great workarounds. Kali is awesome. I have a VM of it, but I only use it for reconnaissance or penetration testing. Use Ubuntu, like a straight Ubuntu desktop. A modern one works just like Windows almost, so it's really easy to use. But Kali is not a great choice for investigation, and we have to like help customers with this a lot. So just be aware of that. Kali's a hacking VM, not an investigation VM. Okay, cool. Will Hunchly work well for capturing YouTube videos? We're gonna do some of that, Latonya, but the thing is that Hunchly actually doesn't capture video itself. So we don't want to get sued, and we don't want to get our extension yanked from the Chrome store, so we don't do video extraction. So there's a few things that you can do. Actually, in the next section, I'm going to show you some tricks, how to deal with video. But then I'm going to also show you how you can kind of plug Hunchly in to something else do those things for you. So this is generally for more technical users, but I know more and more people are getting more and more comfortable just like, building tools or being able to run, tools that are not just a click to install kind of thing. So we're going to cover that pretty shortly. All right, cool. Another question, then we're going to move it on. You guys used to have a script to capture Instagram. Is there one for Twitter? So just to clarify, we used to have a script that a customer had sent us that worked well to block and Instagram from unloading content. So we showed people that like as an option, or if there were technical people that if you wanted to learn how to do this, or if you wanted to kind of work around this problem, that you would have like someone's already kind of shoveled some snow ahead of you. But we do not, we don't release tools like that simply because we don't want to mess around with content in the browser. But much to the chagrin of my team, I think I've actually found a way to do some pretty fun hacks with Hunchly, where you can kind of like hack Hunchly even as a customer without the source code and make it do stuff that it wasn't designed to do. So I can imagine that, I don't know if Phil's even on here right now, but he's probably like screaming into his microphone. He's not. He'll listen to this. He'll listen to this recording though, and he'll be like, no, don't. So anyway, what we're learning is we have to be really good at evidence capture and preservation, but we'll start teaching you all some of the crazy tricks I do to get things like video downloaded, because it is fun, but it's totally like outside of the process that's really critical, which is content preservation, because that's our job. That is actually our job. But we can try to educate you. All right, awesome, cool. Is it possible to add bulk ad attachments? Actually, you know what? We'll find out very soon, but I don't remember. I actually don't remember. So let's do images first. Allow me to compose myself, and then we'll go find out together. Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's talk about images. So with images, Hunchly does a few things with them. The first is every page you browse to, it extracts every image off of the page, hashes them, and in your Hunchly data folder, you get this whole folder of images. This is every image that the browser encountered that we could find, pull down, and extract. So for law enforcement customers that are working in internet crimes against children, for example, this can be really useful. You can drop all of these images into Griffi or another tool, Giro, for example. So this can be obviously really useful, or you can use the hashes for doing hash-based searches. So that's really cool. But one of the things we do when we extract that photograph is we examine it for EXIF metadata. And in this case, we actually found 2 copies of my ugly mug that had EXIF metadata in them. And it's based on hash. So the hashes might have been slightly different between these 2 images. In fact, this one looks slightly out of focus compared to this one. Both horrifying to look at. But the cool thing is that this just happens on its own. So we can click the EXIF badge and start to see some of the EXIF metadata that we have here. We can see the make and model. So it was the last person on Earth with a BlackBerry in 2015. This is really nice because particularly when I do dark web work, it's really cool because sometimes you just hit a hidden service where someone's made a mistake and they left a bunch of metadata in there. Not always useful, but sometimes I've definitely had it be really useful. Now, if you ever have an image that has GPS coordinates stamped into it, we'll extract those images out, those coordinates out, and we'll present a map link for you. All right, cool. If you're ever looking to test this, by the way, go to arstechnica.com, which maybe some of you read already, with Hunchly turned on. Ars has a ton of metadata in their images. Like nearly every image on this page should have some metadata or will. It can take a little bit for them to show up in the dashboard because there's so many of them. It's processing them right now. Oh, there they are. So you can see ours is just loaded with metadata. So it's great. It's like a nice little test bed. Like that one doesn't have a lot, and this one has a ton, right? So there's nice descriptions, right? Tell you like where they got it from, all that stuff. All right, cool stuff. Now, the other thing we can do with images, both from here or from within the browser, is when we're on a page and we see something interesting, an image of interest, we can right-click on that image. So in this case, it's not picking it up as an image. You see that? So there's no like save picture as, and that's very much like Instagram, where if you right click on it, it doesn't pick it up as an image. It's because they use a transparent layer over top of it. So I'm going to try right clicking here again. So I just went into the actual gallery view, and now it picks it up as an image. So not uncommon if you right click on a picture in modern websites that there's like a transparent layer of pixels or something over top of it. So your browser is only able to detect what's on that top layer when you click. So we got this image. Now I want to caption it. So I'm going to add caption to image. So sweet STV. We're not really investigating me anymore, are we? This is what happens. Now you know why I get nothing done, because I'm just off doing my squirrel chasing routine here. So the cool thing is that when you're back here in the dashboard, you get this nice little gallery of images that were important, okay? So I do this all the time when I'm particularly doing fraud investigations or asset tracing, because every time I discover an asset or whatever, I'm gonna tag it and bring it into this gallery view. Is really useful for me. Okay, you can also use these caption images in our report builder later on, but we're probably not going to get to building reports today. All right, cool. So I am going to switch to attachments, I see. So we're going to do attachments, yes. And then I have another question. In the photos folder you showed us, are the names of images the same as the names found on the website they were extracted from? I assume they are, but want to be sure. So no, actually, in the photos folder, the photos are actually named by their hash. And that's because you could have two image.jpegs, or you end up with these weird URL paths in the file names that largely don't work. So we name them by hash because we're guaranteed that they're going to be unique. But when you export those photographs, when you do a report builder, or when you are, for example, exporting a case, the URL of the image is stored along with it. So you have a hash, the URL, the page that it came from, because the URL to an image can be different than the URL of the page, right? So you'll get all of that information all presented to you. So we track all of it, but the files are named by their SHA-256 hash. So hopefully that helps to answer that question, Kevin. All right, now let's talk about attachments, and then we're gonna dovetail off and start taking some right-hand turns, left-hand turns, and everything else. So attachments are a way for you to get content into Hunchly that just doesn't render in your browser, or in particular with video. There's a few different ways that we can do this. The first is we can add files manually. So we can go into here, we can click add, and I'm gonna actually try picking two files. So so only one. Bulk adding attachments, I'm gonna note right now, unless I'm doing something wonky, bulk add attachments. I actually deleted that question, so whoever, Chris, I think. Chris, thank you for that. I'm gonna bring that up with my team. That's awesome. So for now, we're just gonna add one. And it's gonna tell us that we added it manually and that we have a hash here of it. That's great. We can annotate it. So in this case, it's Justin bottle feeding baby raccoon smudge. And if we click it, don't ignore this warning, particularly if you're working in a cyber or incident response team. As you know, this could be a backdoor or Trojan thing. And for the rest of you, of course, just being aware that whatever you've downloaded here or added as an attachment, it's about to be opened or to be executed. So in this case, it's just me bottle feeding an orphaned baby raccoon last summer who got released to the wild. So always my favorite thing to bring up. It's like one of my little fur babies. Cool. So that's how we add them manually. The other nice thing we can do is we can have them added automatically. So in our settings panel over here, we have attached downloads right there. I'm going to turn this on. What this is going to do for me is when I'm out browsing around, let's head back to Google. So when I'm out browsing and I'm going to say, let's download a PowerPoint on raccoons. Once I download a file, Hunchly will pick up that you downloaded a file. So Chrome actually has done some wonky things in the last couple of weeks with downloads. I don't know what happened, but hopefully it's working. So it downloads a file. Hunchly will detect that the file was downloaded, make a byte-for-byte copy of the file into your dashboard. Yeah, see, Chrome is actually, and sometimes it won't download files. It's not signaling. It's weird. Both the dev branch and the regular branch of Chrome, and particularly with, and I don't know if anyone else is running into this, but with Word documents, sometimes it just refuses to download Word documents. You see that? It's just not doing it. It's not like a website problem. It's like a weird Chrome thing. So anyway, I'm sure they'll sort it out. That one worked. So it's going to tell us where we downloaded it from. There's a Word document right there. It's in our case. It's hashed, so we can present it as evidence. We can annotate it. All right. Now, we also have the ability of bringing files in off of a mobile device. So I ended up fielding a ton of calls and emails and DMs over the fall, winter of 2020 and into the spring of 2021 from a number of sexual assault, cyber stalking, and harassment victims for whatever reason. So one of the big things I noted, and also just in my years of working with law enforcement, is that there's always a lot of friction around that evidence handoff between victim and witness and the police, and victim, witness, and their lawyer. You know, I often saw emails where a victim was emailing their investigating officer, and there was 25 attachments, all of them just named like screenshot with a weird timestamp and no context, no order, and, you know, like a 3-word email. And, you know, just to get that email to the investigating officer for that victim was like an extremely painful event. And the officer is left with this like largely messy thing to try to pick through. So what we did is we partnered up and hired a firm here in Saskatoon to build Hunchly Mobile, which I will show you now. And it was designed with the victim and witness in mind, but of course, it is really useful for you as investigators and also as Hunchly users. So you're going to be looking at my mobile phone here, and I have gorilla hands. So be prepared for me to make a lot of typos and mistakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap Hunchly in the bottom right. It's free to download, iOS and Android. So, and I'll show you, we have a website specifically around building evidence packages. So what we can do now is we can just tap new case, and this can be victim, witness, or investigator. And as you know, as an investigator, sometimes you're stuck on the mobile device. You have to use a mobile device. You just need to. You can't emulate something, or you can't get something off of a browser. So I'm just going to call this Justin Seitz Mobile, add case. Cool. So now I can just add files to it. So it's like a little Rubbermaid container, not a web preservation tool. So I'm going to tap add file. I'm going to pick a photo. I have a screenshot. Awesome. So I'm going to select this photo. Nice. I'm going to add a note. I'm going to say Google screen. I always type screen shit. I'm going to try very hard not to today. Now, you know what? Screen shot. Yes, we did it. Save file to case. All right, so that file has been on my mobile device. It's had a byte-for-byte copy, brought into my Hunchly case. It's hashed, it's time-stamped. I've added some context so the victim or witness can add context about what's in the screenshot. We also have instructions about, like, if you have a multi-part text conversation, make sure as you add them that you number them so that your investigating officer or your attorney can read them in order. Right? Small things like that. And using this app is actually not more effort than having to write one of those emails. So now I want to get this case to my computer. So I'm going to tap the hamburger menu in the top right-hand corner. So again, that's just in the top right-hand corner. Okay? And I'm going to go export Justin Seitz Mobile. I'm going to airdrop this back to my laptop. Get that happening. Okay, I'm going to switch y'all back to there, and we're going to bring in our mobile case. I just got to drag and drop it here. There we go. Cool, so here's my mobile case that I just airdropped. Now I'm going to right-click and go extract all. So as an investigating officer, you don't need Hunchly. When the victim or witness sends you this, you can just open this report. I'm going to open it with Chrome. Click attachments. You've got a timestamp of when the victim and witness added it. You got a hash of the file. You got a description of what it is. You can actually look at it so you know what it is. And we also have a case creation and export date and time, right? So you have a full timeline of this victim or witness building up this evidence package for you. You've got hashes and all of this stuff. And also, most importantly, is that victims hate forensic acquisitions, right? So this prevents a victim from having to get an invasive forensic acquisition. It gives them another opportunity to do this. And it also gives you, an investigator, if you're a Hunchly user, the ability to capture screen recordings, download videos, whatever you need to do on that mobile device. And in Hunchly, what we can do is then import that mobile case directly in. So I'm going to go import case. I'm going to add it to an existing case. I'm going to pick Justin Seitz, pick the zip file. Okay, import it. It's going to bring it in, and those files are going to show up as attachments right here in my dashboard. I can keep investigating from here or do a full case export at this point. And you can see that the source is set to Hunchly mobile app, so it tells you what the source was. Okay, so the great thing is that this is really useful for all kinds of reasons, but also, as I mentioned, for video, my favorite thing is OSync Combine. So what I recommend, oh, come on now, where's that link I want? Ah, there it is. Download social media. I'm going to give you guys the URL here, don't worry. Here we go. How do I send to all? Oh, I got to use the chat window. There we go. Cool. So what this post will teach you is how to download videos the old-fashioned way. And it's important because it will actually teach you how to kind of get comfortable with your browser and just get used to being able to do stuff like that. Great instructions, great visuals, everything's super clear, and bookmark OSync Combine because it's one of the best resources out there for investigative resources, and they're good people. All right, so that's how I would download video using one of those tricks, or I would use one of my data forwarding tricks, which I'm going to show you right now after I have a sip of coffee. So if anybody has any questions or needs something clarified, now's a great time. If not, give me just 10 seconds to have a sip of coffee. All right, ready for this? Okay, cool. So I'm going to close the browser. Now, you might not have heard of data forwarding before. Not a ton of people have that are Hunchly users. This is a big part of what we're spending a lot of time educating people on right now. But what data forwarding is every time you capture a URL, a page in Hunchly, is the data forwarding will fire information off to a place that you tell it. So this can be a server that will store all of this. It can be a fancy, in our case, a fancy YouTube downloader, which I'm about to demonstrate to you. But this can also be the way, for example, that if you have 10, 15, 20, or 50 analysts working, you can actually feed all of that into a central repository where you can do keyword searches, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So again, the Hunchly Training Institute's coming up to teach some of those techniques, but if you have ideas, questions, or you're like, hey, how can my team do this? I'll jump on a call with you and give you some ideas and talk to you about security implications and all of those things. So feel free to reach out. Now, in this case, this whole inability for me to quickly download YouTube videos is really annoying. And I don't like using third-party tools sometimes. And in other cases, tools were banned by YouTube. So what I did instead was I created some Python that my Hunchly instance can just notify every page it's hit. It's going to get that data forwarding request, and then it's going to look at it and say, is this a YouTube video? And if it is, it's going to do a bunch of stuff in the background for me, including downloading the video and processing it. And in the last time we did this, I showed how it will just download the YouTube videos for us and stick it into a folder for us. But today what we're going to do is take that a step further, and I'm going to show you some real fancy stuff. So how do we enable the data forwarding? In our settings, in data forwarding, this is what it looks like. So there may be some other settings depending on how crazy you want to get in here, but you can actually pass metadata along to using case information fields. But for this example, what I want to do is I am going to enable it, and I'm going to point it at my Python script. So I'm just going to go fire up my Python script first, and then we'll switch over to it. And let me do that. There we go. Probably going to end up disclosing some API keys by accident. Always fun. All right, cool. So my Python is up and running. And I'm just going to copy and paste the URL. All right, so it's on a different machine than this Hunchly investigation machine. All right, so I'm going to hit save and then test connection. So I use the test connection just as a way I can look over at my Python script and see a request come in. I know everything's working. All right, that's it. I'm just pointing it at an HTTP address. Now, you can have this be SSL. You can pass usernames and passwords. You can pass URL parameters to add some more authentication. There's a bunch of different ways you can kind of customize this to your environment. We leave it completely up to the user. So what we want to do here is, in this case, we want to go over here, and I'm actually going to create a new case. Ooh, I want to make sure. So it looks like it's actually synchronizing my old pages. Sync only new pages. Okay, no, it's not. It must be a bug. Or I have old pages that were queued up from before. So I'm just going to create a new case here so we have something clean. I'm going to go YouTube example. All right. And we're going to go to our browser. And I'm going to set it to YouTube example. And let's head to YouTube. All right. Now we'll let that load, and I just got to get over to my Python here and pause it for you. There we go. Sorry, I'm like super brain dead this morning. Apparently, I like scrolled past the code I needed about 100 times. All right. So I love the dodo. Let's go to the dodo. All right, so that triggered my data capture. I'll just let that run. Okay, so let's take a look at, and when you're testing this, and I'm going to post all this code, by the way. So just look at my Twitter feed afterwards. This whole Python script will be posted. You can just go do this. All right, so, oh man, these abandoned puppies. Let's do this chipmunk. Okay, so I've clicked on this video, and now I am going to switch you to the Python. All right, where did you go? That was Jacques, by the way, from Finding Nemo. That was that accent. All right, let's get over here. Cool. Okay, cool. So we're looking at my Python code here. Now, what's happening is we have received a request from Hunchly that it's on that YouTube video page, and now I'm just going to start walking through the code and explain what we're doing. All right, so the first thing we need to do is the Hunchly page is actually stored in a variable already. So we have it stored in a variable, it's just a dictionary, and we're pulling the URL out, okay? So this URL object, and I just got to pause to make sure I got to clear one console so that I can, so I'm not exposing something I shouldn't. All right, cool. So if we just take a look at, if you've never used Python before, the pretty print module is super useful. So I'll just show you what a Hunchly page looks like from the data forwarder. It's this big JSON document, right? It's this big chunk of information. There's stuff that's extracted from the page. It's got all kinds of data in here. There's all kinds of IP addresses it looks like it pulled out, maybe from CDNs, content delivery networks. Is it delivery or distribution? Delivery, I think. Delivery? Anyway. We see photos, EXIF metadata, stuff that Hunchly's picked up. Real cool. It's all in code. So that's awesome. So let's just keep walking through here. So it's saying, is YouTube in the URL? Looks like it is. So now what we're doing is we start up a new YouTube object. So there's a library called PyTube. We're passing it in the URL of the video. Okay, cool. Now we're getting the highest resolution video. So when people upload to YouTube, videos are generally offered in a bunch of different resolutions. We want the best one. Okay. Oh, and we had another request come in. So actually this kicked us back up to here. So in a multi-threaded, so the server I'm running is multi-threaded. Threads are just like little computers inside of one program. So what happens is that Hunchly actually switched and browsed to a new video up here, or it actually got content loaded while that video was playing, sorry. And so that triggered another capture. So that second capture coming in actually comes into a different thread, one of those little mini computers. So that's why it looks like things have reversed in time, but what we're doing now is walking through the second request. So it can be a little tricky when you're debugging Python stuff that's multi-threaded. So let's just keep walking. We'll keep walking. It'll give us a break here right away, don't worry. Yes, yes, yes. How many pages is it firing into me here? I'm actually going to switch. So it actually wants to process I'm going to switch it up to here so I can skip past this. This YouTube download right here is where I'm going to pause it next. We'll give it a second. It might have actually already started downloading it. Let me go check the folder. Oh, it's fun. Videos. There we go. All right. So let me just kick this back up over in I paused everything in the other side in the VM. Let me just give her a kick here. So, and you also have to wait until Hunchly's fully captured the page before it will send that data forwarding request over. That part is just by necessity because it needs to process everything it's seeing. So we'll give it another video to process. Okay. Have a look. And I'll just pause the video. That might be enough to just stop the page from updating like crazy. Okay. So it's getting the highest resolution video. Oh, it actually ran into an exception there. So let's find out what that exception is. If you never use a traceback module, traceback.print.exe 404 not found. So it's saying that it couldn't find the video. Let's go back up here and take a look at what we have. It could also be, occasionally, the PyTube stuff, you get blocked. All right, so it's just failing to get that video. Maybe, and again, this has happened to me before where for whatever reason, I just get blocked. Like it just doesn't let me, YouTube servers either picks up on the PyTube usage or something. So if you run into this issue while you're testing, just you can try it again or flip a VPN on. I don't want to flip my VPN on right now in the middle of a webinar because that's generally a bad idea to mess with it. The other thing too is that if the capture keeps triggering, I'll just do it manually. I'll right click and go capture, and that will fire the request off so that it's less kind of spurious. I'm not getting a bunch of requests coming in. So let's just see if it'll pick this video up. And if not, we might just simply be blocked. Yeah, so it's just one of those things where you end up getting this blocked. Let's do our best here. Let's see if I can actually flip my VPN on, if that will give me some love. But, you know, it won't. Hold on. Thankfully, I have output already that I can show you. We will give this one more shot. This is probably just me being sloppy, really. Where's the VPN? All right, cool. Just give me one sec. If this kills the webinar, I'm so sorry, and I'll talk to you very soon. All right. You guys still with me? Yeah. I don't think I lost connection. That was brave, wasn't it? Can you still hear me? Someone want to type me a question? Still here, perfect. All right, let's see if that resolves it. Because I have been monkeying around a lot lately with VPN up and down. So I might have just simply irritated them finally. So I'm gonna fire my data forwarder back up again here. All right, let's give it another shot. Now I also don't know. PyTube has kind of been the one that I've always used. If there's other Python libraries that you all have used or have tested before, let me know. But PyTube to me was the most reliable method. There were some other ones that like did some weird stuff like routed traffic out places and all kinds of weird stuff. All right, let's see if this works. Are you gonna error out again? Yep. So it's just simply unhappy. It's not letting us resolve any of the videos, but I might be able to do this. Let's see if it's just simply that one function call. So what I'll do is I will just go this dot. Oh no, it doesn't even want to give me that. Yeah, so it's not even giving me any streams at all. It's not just the high resolution one. There's just no streams at all available to PyTube right now, which is not useful for us, obviously. But this has happened before. So what this code does, and you will have, and definitely test it, because I've had this happen before and it just goes back to working. So what we do is we simply hash the video when we download it. So this download right here just downloads the video. Okay, we hash it and we store it in a video folder. So we have this nice little, I'll show you what it looks like. We have this nice folder. Get you over there. Take a look. Right here. So this is me playing around the last few weeks. I've cleaned this folder out some. These are all the videos that we're just downloading from YouTube. Okay. Now the other thing is we can go into our video data folder. And what you will also see is the result of the next step. Okay. Perfect, you should be back. Cool. So what we're also doing, and I'll take you back into code shortly, but what we're also doing is we're pulling down the closed captions. So the captions come down with the videos if they're available. This is really nice because it gives you a keyword searchable database effectively of all the language that's in the video. So this is really useful. You can literally just search on your command line or any of your desktop search tools to search through the captions. Awesome. And the other thing we do is produce a bunch of metadata. So what this metadata will include are both things from the video itself, but it also includes some other interesting stuff. So if we switch back to the Python, I know there's a lot of switching. Let's get you to the Python. Now, what we're doing is we extract the captions, and then we go into this fancy analyze video function. So we're going to switch there, and I'll show you what this does. So in analyze video, we actually use computer vision. So we pull the video in, okay? We count the number of frames in the video and the frames per second. And then what we do is some real fancy stuff of which I had no responsibility in, okay? So we walk through each video frame one by one. So there's like about 15,000 in this one, I think, in the one that we were looking at. So one by one, we start walking our way through the frames. And then what we do is this funky thing called perceptual hashing. Now, perceptual hashing is actually something you all use all the time. When you reverse image search on Yandex or Google Images or TinEye, they're using a form of perceptual hashing, a way to basically take images and look to see if they're similar visually, okay? So what I'm doing here is I actually have a Python library that has that ability in it. So what I'm doing is I'm hashing frame 1 and frame 2 and saying, are they really similar? Because if they are, I don't need to analyze both of them. I only need frame 1, right? So then I go, okay, give me frame 3, and I compare frame 1 and frame 3, right? And if they're similar, then I discard frame 3 and I keep going. And once I get to frame 1000 and it says, yeah, this one's pretty different, then I add that to the list. Now I have 2 images to analyze. And this prevents me from like analyzing 15,000 images when in video frames, like you could get 100 frames in a row that are just literally pretty much identical, right? It's just a human blinking or something, right? So I find all of the unique frames, all right? I get them all together. I store them. So we can go look at the stored video frames too, because this is useful. This will allow us later for doing searches to be able to say, if I find something in a video frame, where in the video is it, right? I can then seek right to that part in the video. Cool. So I save all the frames as JPEGs that I want to analyze. And then what I do is I ship each one of them off to Amaga. And I've used Amaga in the past. You might have remembered in a gun detection series I did, or a couple of posts I did a few years ago, actually more than a few years now. So what I do is I send those video frames off to Amaga, which analyzes the images and comes back and tells me all of the objects detected in them. So this then allows me to add that to my searchable database. Now I can actually search a YouTube video based on its name, its author, its title, the closed captioning, so anything that was spoke inside the video, as well as I can keyword search for any objects that might be present in the video. So all I do is send that off. I take the results back from Amaga and I store it in a JSON file. So we're going to take a look at that JSON file now, since the live demo didn't work. And you can see what kind of stuff I got right there. So let's switch to Sublime. Cool. So there's this. There's the URL, the author, the date of when the video was posted, the channel ID, the description, keywords that are present on the YouTube keywords, right? That comes from YouTube. File size, hash, detected objects, man, grandfather, portrait, person, adult, senior, handsome, clearly not a video of me. Here we go, keep going, domestic animal, patient, right? So the cool thing is that this is just Amaga, right? So I can take Amaga and Google's Cloud Vision and Amazon's, and I can actually send these frames off to all three and bring them back and say, okay, let's take the best of all three, or the least generic. Like some of these are pretty generic, but laptop, you know, at this point in the video, at this frame, well, what does that mean? It could be pretty interesting depending on the context, right? So the cool thing is this is all just stuff that's happening in the background. Hunchly's not doing anything but just telling this Python script, hey, I browsed to a YouTube video. You should go download it and analyze it for me. So what I want to do in a future webinar is show you how you can start to like shovel this stuff into a little database locally, and then how do you search it, right? How can you write a little Python script that searches through it? So when you want to dig through things, or you want to search through your own data and you don't want to stand up a big Elasticsearch server, you don't have the security parameters to be able to do something distributed, that you're able to do that still. So this is getting more and more like into the automated investigation infrastructure, right? Being able to kind of build tools up that fill gaps. You're not reliant. Well, in this case, I got to find out a fix for this PyTube thing. So that definitely I want to change, and I might fix that before I put the gist up. But I think that this is kind of what I want to start showing people, is that you can start to do some really interesting stuff. And once you have Hunchly as the signaling method, the method that's going to tell you, hey, here's a URL or a time or a piece of information, you can do a ton of stuff afterwards. So I'm going to keep training people on how to do this and how to enrich data and all of that. But personally, YouTube stuff is by far, once I built this, I was like, oh my God, I'm never not doing this. Because just YouTube has been a pain for me forever as it relates to investigations. And this definitely solved that problem. If it would work when I'm doing it live in front of people, that would be even better. So anyway, do you have any questions about data forwarding, what I've shown you, some of this more high-end kind of researchy stuff? Feel free to ask now. We're about 4 minutes over time, so I totally understand if people want to bail, but I will hang out and answer all the questions. So if you have some, just let me know and I will stick around. I'm going to have a sip of coffee before that, and if not, you can all get on with your day. Mary, you always want to hang out with me. Would this work with TikTok? TikTok. So like data forwarding, browsing to a TikTok URL? See you, Dean. Thanks, Ann. Cool. Yeah, Chris, if you can give me a... I see you, Ginger. Yeah, Chris, if you're asking about whether like a video downloader with TikTok would work, is that your question? No? Okay. I'm going to, if anyone has any questions, so Chris, definitely the TikTok question, just let me know if you want. I mean, I can also write something. So if you want me to like write some code to demonstrate how I would do it with TikTok, let me know. Happy to do that. I'll write it down anyway. And hey, thanks, Kevin. That's great. Thanks for showing up and hanging out. And these non-training-ish webinars are non-conventional. So I'm glad you're able to hang out. TikTok. All right. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or anything like that. So please, if anyone has any burning desires that they need help with, anything at all, just shoot me an email, send you my email. There you go. Cool. This will be on YouTube later. Oh, that's a cool one. Code to barcode scan and search web for items. Oh. Let me put that in the old research bucket. Barcode search. I think there's apps for that, but I'm interested to hear what you want to go with that. So anyway, I will leave it here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning, and I will be back next week. So stay tuned. Bye-bye.